What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Top Rope List edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast, where we're going to be getting into our best or favorite or top or whatever WrestleMania moments of all time. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me, as always, are Robert E. Felice.
Hey.
And Callum Wiggins.
One
of the two themes that I really want to bring back for WrestleMania. The other one's the other old classic one. So, yeah. Just have still images. That's what WrestleMania needs to end this year. It needs to end with everybody celebrating Cody's won, and then we have those two themes playing as they show you clips of WrestleMania. Well, that moment hasn't happened yet, so that can't go on our lists, but I'm kind of hoping that it will. And what we're going to do here is we're going to have our top 10 breakdown from bottom to top, 10 to 1. As we go along, we're going to do what we've done before with the top rope list, which is if somebody says something that somebody else has on their list that is significantly higher up, like usually around 3-4 spots or so, then we're going to put a hold on that and just take a little rest hold for the discussion in the meantime, and then come back around to when we get to the highest rank where the person has that, because we will have some crossover between our three lists. We also have some different things on our list that somebody might not necessarily have at all on the other list, let alone it being like, oh, I got that at number 2 and you have it at number 9 or something. And as we say our lists and stuff, if we eventually decide that we want to do some kind of a consolidation thing to try to, bounce around our opinions, we might end up doing that. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We'll see how this goes. We also want to know, though, what your lists would be. So drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Make sure that you do all the different things that we've got going on here. First things first, I want to remind everybody that there are some Road to WrestleMania things that we normally have going on that I had forgotten about a little bit, like the Smark Madness tournament. Totally forgot about it up until yesterday. And the only reason I remembered about it was I was on a treadmill and there was a TV screen in front of me that had the regular March Madness thing. I was like, oh yeah, that's March Madness is going, oh crap, So I tried to figure out something that we could do. Most votes went towards the try to go for like an 8-person or 8-seed tournament thing. Tried to think of some ideas, settled on the idea of what's going on right now, where Roman is going to eventually match and then eclipse Hulk Hogan for most WrestleMania main events this year. He is currently one below, and then, of course, night 1 and night 2. That's going to put him at the top. So there are 8 people who have had the top 8, I should say, the most WrestleMania main events. They are in the tournament. Who is the main WrestleMania main eventer? If you think of WrestleMania main eventer, who do you think of? Is it Hulk Hogan, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, John Cena, etc.? That Smark Madness tournament's going on right now. Go ahead and vote for that by going to the sidebar of smarkoutmoment.com. And on the sidebar, you will, by the end of this podcast at least, also see the Road to WrestleMania giveaway contest, because I finally settled things with fun.com, where we're going to be giving away, I believe it's 3 Rocky Maivia Funko Pop figures. So that is going to end around the week after WrestleMania or so. I might stretch it out just a tiny bit longer since I'm starting it so late. In previous years, I've started it like mid-February, and this year I forgot to do it until now. So, I'll have that all set up on there. You will be able to have multiple chances to win in the same ways that we've done before in the past, where if you share it on Facebook, you share it on Twitter, you follow us, you subscribe to us on YouTube, you buy merchandise. The merchandise ones are definitely the best options for you. So if you want to win those Funko Pops and at the same time get yourself a Smark Out Moment t-shirt or something, it's the best way to get yourself a lot of entry points. And of course, you can pick up those merchandise things on Redbubble and TeePublic. As long as you show me the confirmation code of what you purchased, then that will count. All of the people that always try to say that they bought something and didn't, and don't have the confirmation code, get their entries eradicated. So every time that they try it, all they're doing is giving me more work to click on the pick a new person button. So yeah, you can't fool me. But Redbubble and TeePublic is where you can figure that stuff out. If you want to help us out on the monetary side of things outside of that, of course, we've got the Patreon, we've got the YouTube channel membership. Click on that join button on YouTube. Gives you access to the same stuff as all the Patreon stuff, including the Darkcast, which pretty much the This week, later on, we're going to have an episode of Hall of Lame. Stay tuned for that. The Darkcast here, of course, on both platforms, exactly the same outside of the video side of things. Pick your poison tier, same. Little thanks button, greatly appreciated too. But double check that you are subscribed to this channel, ring the notification bell, hit the like button on this video too. All that stuff is completely free. And leave your comments below and tell us what your lists are. Also leave your comments on the Discord server. I'll put that out there. In the meantime, while we're doing all our plugs, and then of course we'll back around here to the top rope list. Now, best WrestleMania moments, favorite WrestleMania moments. I think we have like a similar and then at the same time a little bit different approach when it comes to this. And of course we have our different eras that we have been into, and there are certain things that resonated with us just because we're more of a fan of those people. And then, you know, it's not like we're ranking something that is definitive. It is an opinion-based thing. So how easy was it for you guys to make your lists?
It's pretty easy when you're just thinking about yourself, but when you try to think about it from an objective, like, okay, well, you know, should this match go on there? I don't know. It's a pretty important match historically. So that's the part where I had a little trouble.
I think, I mean, I basically just took the approach of just going down the list of WrestleManias and then just trying to have a look through their Wikipedia page and stuff to see if there are things that just click to my memory. End up getting like a long list of about 30 odd moments and matches together, and then just started to carve those back. There was a few that were just like very obvious and just like etched in my mind, but just trying to fill out some of the later spots in the list meant that it had a bit more like internal debate about those.
So what I did is definitely a little bit different. I took this as, for some reason, I was thinking that we were going to do a consolidated list. So I took more so of my like personal opinions a little bit out of the mix. So I might rearrange this stuff on the spot or something. But I also took it very literally of best WrestleMania moments. So I'll say this like outright. My favorite match of all time, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25, is not on my list. Because to me, I was like, well, that wasn't a moment, it was a match. And the ladder match from WrestleMania 10 isn't on my list. But that would have been if I would have gone with like, I'll throw matches in there too. Then this list would be a little bit different. Because there's some stuff on this list that, for me at least, that are just like absolute pure moment, and the match itself wouldn't be grouped in like that. And then other things are, it's the match and it's the moment, and they just kind of, you know, the moment is like the button on it and all. So we might have some pretty different approaches here, on top of course, the different eras. Because if anybody's been listening to this podcast for years, you know that I'm a product of like the pre-new generation attitude era, and then 2007 or so onward. And then Rob and Callum, you guys have more of like the ruthless aggression type era that you're way more focused on, that I missed out on. So there's moments that a lot of like Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar stuff that I wasn't around for, that didn't resonate the same kind of way. I'm curious how many of those are on this list that I would be like, oh, I don't even remember that happened after rewatching that or something. I ended up with a list of about 20 things, and then I pretty much narrowed it down to my just top 10 with a couple extra spare things that I was like, well, I'll rank them too while I'm at it. We'll come back around and talk about some of those if they haven't already been mentioned, and just say like, these were in my honorable mentions. But here's something that I don't think will be on your lists. This is my number 10. And it's, again, it's not the match itself necessarily, it's the moment. But WrestleMania 10, and I just mentioned this pretty recently with this whole Cody Rhodes thing. WrestleMania 10 ends with Bret Hart beating Yokozuna. Everybody happy. They are lifting him up on their shoulders. The whole babyface roster is celebrating. And then there's Owen Hart looking on, pissed that he had beaten his brother earlier in the night. And by the end of the, an hour and a half, 2 hours later or something, Bret is the celebrated champion. And it's like, where's my flowers? I thought that that's still one of the absolute best endings to WrestleMania. And I love Owen. I love Brett. I love a good happy ending when it comes to that. Yokozuna's great. They made the right call. They didn't go with some kind of screwy thing like they've done in years past, where it's just like, well, let's do their whole Roman thing. And
highly dependent on whether or not you were just wanted to see Lex Luger win the damn title for America.
Yeah, but then he should have won it at SummerSlam. By that point, he already lost enough favor. The crowd was pro Owen, pro Brett. So that's my number 10. I don't think it would be on either of your lists, though, right?
So it's funny, the visual of Brett holding up the championship and, get everybody putting him on the shoulders, I think would have been on my list had this list been done maybe 10 years ago. Because that's one of those iconic visuals that they always played when I was growing up. Just that shot of Brett. But no, it's not on my list.
See, I tend to think, if I think Brett holding up a title, I tend to think of him holding it up and then holding up the 5. That's my Brett holding up a belt image. As if you need to have one in your brain. But which one do you guys want to go for your number 10? Unless you want to talk about the Brett and Owen thing or something. Yeah.
I guess I'll go. Mine is one that I know you guys are not going to have. It's John Cena winning the WWE Championship for the first time from JBL. Now, I looked at it like this. That match, nothing to write home about. And it's only iconic in hindsight because when you realize what it started, really, 10 years of John Cena as a top guy, and he's still one of the most celebrated WWE superstars of all time. And a lot of that stems from him winning the championship from JBL right there. And he wasn't even like the main event guy. But by the next year, he would headline WrestleMania. And it would pretty much be determined that he was going to be that guy moving forward. And again, it's one of those things that I think for stamping an era, that is an important moment in WrestleMania history. But again, I know it's not on your list.
Very huge moment for WrestleMania history. Like you said, I mean, it's creating the franchise player in a definitive way. And you got the, celebration of him like in the crowd and all, but definitely not on my list.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it on there because, as you say, the match sucked. And that title reign leading into that match sucked. And it also has a bit of a tinge of regret, or at least for me, the fact that that's the last time we really see the old Undisputed Championship. Because literally a couple of days, week later, we've got the spinner belt. And we will have the spinner belt for the next
7 years.
Yeah, 7 years. So yeah, so there's a bit of sweetness about it.
I hate that spinner belt so much.
It's crazy that they kept it, but people love it.
It's even crazier that they've kept the tag title belt design longer than that, because it's like
been like
I get
years almost.
I get that they liked the spinner belt when it comes to like making a lot of merchandise sales, but who the hell's buying those tag belts? Ugly ass championships. McCallum, what's your number 10?
So it's there's a little bit of a cheaty thing about this one because there's one that I wanted to put at number 10, and that I've currently got listed number 10, which doesn't technically happen at WrestleMania, but it's about WrestleMania.
Oh, it's Drew McIntyre beating Big Show.
Big
right?
Show, yeah.
That was the most anxiety-ridden thing I've ever experienced. Going, oh my God, they're gonna give Big Show the title because why not? You're in front of nobody. Why not just give him a title?
So the one that I had originally put in there is something that I think Tony might not even know that exists. Rob, you might know about it. It's called the Mania of WrestleMania.
Oh, that's a great documentary.
Yeah, it's like it was a documentary that was made about WrestleMania 19 that really kind of because I saw it because it was on the DVD for the WrestleMania 19. one of the first wrestling DVDs I ever got, and it was like the first thing that really kind of exposed me to. I'd only been watching wrestling for about a year at that point. I knew that it wasn't like real, but it was the first thing that really exposed me to the inner workings of the business a little bit more. I know it's like obviously it's a WWE documentary, so there's going to be bits about it, but it was very like real for a WWE documentary. Because it was talking about how Austin had a panic attack and like an anxiety attack before going the night before he would have the match with The Rock in his hotel room because he'd been just drinking loads of like soda and stuff beforehand because he was so nervous about the match because he knew that he was going to retire afterwards. Talked about like Brock Lesnar getting the concussion after the shooting star press and Angle's the multiple neck surgeries that he went through after the thing going into it, basically having a broken neck going into that match with Lesnar. So
kind of like the WWE 24 documentaries that they have.
Yeah, but it just felt
Beyond the
more,
Ring or something.
Yeah,
Beyond the
it
Ring.
just felt, for some reason, it just felt more. Again, I don't really watch too many of the documentaries nowadays that they do, but this one felt quite, weird just seeing them in a different context, especially like at the young age that I was watching them because I hadn't seen them in that kind of context before. So that's kind of. But if I have to go on that's like strictly WrestleMania focused, and I will be incorporating matches into mine beyond just moments as well, because I think it's like matches, moments, experiences. There are moments in this one that's great as well, but I think that I'm going to go with Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch from WrestleMania 38.
I think have matches in my list. I think that's another place where we differ from Tony, but mine are going to be a bit more historical focused.
I presume that you two wouldn't have put this one on there, but I think that for me, it's the best women's match in WrestleMania history. And I was like a really huge fan of this because I hadn't been like a huge fan of the build up towards it, but it kind of just it feels to me like, and again, I know that they might palm this off as like feeling too much, but it felt like an actually really good long-term story between Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair, because I know people have very mixed feelings about how that SummerSlam match happened and the result of it, but it just built up to a really good match at WrestleMania, which had a lot of animosity between them. You get the introduction of the real like big time Bex character instead, and it's another like crowning moment in Bianca Belair's ascent to being like the top woman in WWE. So I thought that like I just watched it and it feels more heated and it's a bit more of intense. It's more intense than most of the matches that we get in WrestleMania period, but especially for the women's side of things. So yeah, it's definitely like a match that I go back and revisit from time to time.
See, I still have the same approach that I did before about it, where the match itself in a bubble, you just ignore everything leading up to it. You watch the match. It's a great match. The concept of Belair loses her belt at SummerSlam and then has to work her way back to getting a title shot and then gets the win over Becky and offsets that. Great idea. Every little bit of when you start dissecting it, though, ruined it for me because I hated how they did the title change. I hated that they followed it up with a lot of like encounters. And then it was like, well, then we'll just come back around and win again. Because I was like, man, if you kept them apart, that would be a different thing. And I never really like my WrestleMania feuds to be the way that they've done a lot in the past 10 years, I would say, which is we'll do something and then we'll do it again and then we'll come back around to it again. But we'll just kind of like take a break in the meantime. And like, it's almost like the second act isn't there. And I think that like if you're going a list of WrestleMania matches, certainly if you're going with women's matches, this is like top 1, 2, 3 for sure. So I get where you're going with that for that, but not on my list now.
No, I get that.
I do have as one of my honorable mentions a thing about Bianca. I don't know if Rob will have that on his list or yeah.
It's on the list.
Yeah, okay. So I'm come back around. You guys might have this on your list, you might not, but my number 9 is KofiMania.
Yeah, we can put a pin in that one.
Alrighty.
I'd like to just apologize. I'll say it right now, it's not on the list.
Boo.
But for that matter, neither is Brian.
Boo. All right, what's your number 9s?
My number 9 is Rock vs. Hogan.
That was close. That was one of my long listed ones, but it's not on my list.
That visual, and I'm going to mention this phrase when I get to my number 1 thing, which has already been mentioned in this discussion. Spoiler. That match changed the way that people do matches. Everything kind of became like, okay, how can we get to that level of match? And it's just so iconic. And I would like to say that if Hogan had just put a pin in his career and maybe even his outside curricular activities at that moment, he would have went down in history as the best of all time. That match is so good.
It's one of those ones which it's perfect sports entertainment, because it's not a match in terms of, it's not a work rate match, but it is just do spots, soak in adulation of crowd, do other sport, soak in adulation of crowd for 10 more seconds. It's like, yeah, it's an experience watching that match. Just the way the crowd reacts to everything is just, yeah, it's iconic for that reason.
Not on my main list, but it was my number 11 for moment of just the stare down in general, because you can't get much better than that. Just having The Rock and Hulk Hogan face to face, and like all the crowd just going nuts for that alone. That's the kind of vibe I want for almost every WrestleMania match. Clearly, obviously, we're not going to get that for like Jimmy and Jey Uso up against each other isn't going to have the same level of importance to it, but I want that vibe for everything. That's why I always make the argument about like, if you could do it better and like spice it up, make it's got a gimmick to it, or it's like, Gunther versus Brock Lesnar, you put those two against each other and you just have the still image of that, means more than Gunther versus Sami Zayn. And Rock and Hogan, that happened at a time frame that I wasn't watching, so I missed out on the build for that, so I'm sure I'm missing a little bit of that spice too. But huge moment for WrestleMania.
It's better if you don't know the build.
It's much better if you don't. They tried to. There's literally a moment where they tried to kill The Rock.
Yeah, they slammed a
semi into an ambulance that he was in.
Yeah, with The Rock in it. Yeah,
you're better off not having watched.
Was Rikishi driving?
No, it would have been better if it was.
Oh, Callum, what's your number 9?
Edge spears Mick Foley through a flaming table.
That was my number 12.
Yeah, that barely misses the cut.
It's just so. I mean, that match in general is great because Foley. I mean, we all know how great Foley is. You don't really have to talk too much about it. But the fact, it always bears repeating just how much he put a load of young guys over in his final years as an active wrestler. Not even an active wrestler, he was fully retired at this point, but he came back every now and again to put guys like Randy Orton and then Edge over here. And just the hardcore match in general is one of Edge's best matches in WWE, I'd say. And then just culminating with the lighter fluid, spear through the table. It's the only real time you get to hear Joey Styles say, "Oh my God," on a WrestleMania show. Yeah, it's just one of those crazy moments that for WWE is just unbelievably rare. Of course, if you look further afield to like ECW at the time and other more indie promotions, you probably will see flaming tables more regularly. But it was just something that you just didn't see in WWE, and the fact they pulled it out for this big show and this big match just makes it feel, it was super special.
And they actually pull it off instead of being like the most recent example in AEW,
Nick Wayne,
where it was just like, let's try to set it on fire. It's not setting on fire. We set it on fire, and then it goes out. Okay, we'll set it on fire again. It goes out, and then you miss.
I mean, that's technically their second most recent flaming table spot.
Oh, they did another one since then? What?
Yeah, did Mark Briscoe in
that is true.
In their collision main event against the House of Black, they put Mark Briscoe through a flaming table.
I didn't see that one. Did that at least go better off?
Yeah, that one worked out.
Good.
Actually, it
No,
worked out too well. The table just wouldn't go out because it was still on fire when Briscoe was in it. So yeah, so went bad in the other direction, really.
It's overcompensating.
Yeah.
that's WrestleMania 22 had some magic, and that moment is very perfect for describing that. And it's also the last normal venue WrestleMania, and little things like that are things that I miss. Like it didn't have to be like, all right, we packed 80,000 people for these 2 nights. It was just in the Allstate Arena, and they just put on a good show. It was fun.
Going from one Edge spear to another one, my number 8 is Edge spears Jeff Hardy.
Yeah, I could probably put a pin in that. Callum, is it on your list?
No, it was long listed for me. It was like kind of like almost like 50-50 of putting those two either alongside each other or near each other. But yeah, it's not on my full list.
I'll swing it back around then. Rob, what do you got on your number 8?
So I have this, and I have listings like this for a couple of them. But my number 8 is WrestleMania 37 / Sasha versus Bianca.
So that was my number 13. So honorable mention, the soaking in the moment when they're crying at the beginning of it.
Yeah, and specifically that match, and the reason why I put the whole Mania on there is because as a fan, and I advise that you all go back and watch that Vladimir documentary
So good.
on Peacock. But as a fan, it was like, holy shit, fans are back. WrestleMania is in front of people again after such a wild time in the pandemic. And I really think that it's a special night special 2 nights for that reason. And then when you get into the Sasha and Bianca of it all, and I'll spoil this, surprising, but the other women's headliner is on my list as well. But that is easily the better of the 2 matches by a mile, and it's one of the best matches of WrestleMania history. And they make history, legitimately make history. The build of that match is terrible, but that was a special night. First time you're having fans back in a year, and they make history, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's an excellent match and great moment for those two. It's a real time when WWE says they're making history and they're actually making history.
Yeah, it's not like for the first time ever, this person's wearing a red hat and it's a Tuesday night and that kind of thing.
So I'll go with my number 8 then.
Mm-hmm.
Of Ronda Rousey's debut match, WrestleMania 34.
Very close for me.
I think
remotely close to being on my list.
Yeah. I think that it's every participant in this match. I think it's their last final great hour in terms of like, it's like, when people describe like the final hour, it's like their last big moment. I think it's the last great Kurt Angle match, the last great Triple H match, clearly the last great Stephanie McMahon match. And Ronda's a bit more difficult to do because obviously she had no matches, but I don't think she ever had a better match than her first one.
They made it feel like she was going to deliver.
Yeah, because this whole match is structured so unbelievably well, and it's also elevated by the fact that it happens on WrestleMania 34, and literally everything else about WrestleMania 34 sucks. For the most part, outside maybe a few odd bits and pieces, but it's a bad show overall. But this is like the main shining light throughout the entire thing. And yeah, I thought the Triple H and Kurt Angle, we obviously know how they've worked together in the past. I thought they brought some really good chemistry to it, and it's the last time that I've really seen Kurt Angle in WWE do, look like Kurt Angle. Obviously, a much older and slower version of Kurt Angle, but he had the depiction of Kurt Angle. You could tell it was that guy still in there. And I think Triple H, this is kind of his last great match, or his last great performance, because his only other WrestleMania matches past this point where it was against Batista, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that match sucked. So, like, and I think other than, like, maybe a couple of other, like, either house show or like other Saudi matches that he had afterwards, and none of those are much to write home about. So I think this is his last great performance. And Stephanie was great in this one as well. And I always had a bit of a love-hate relationship with Stephanie in terms of, like, I think that at her best she's an excellent character, but at her worst she just ruins the product. But she as someone who's not a trained wrestler, she can put on some really great performances in matches. And she really worked well with Ronda here and put her over. It's one of the rare times that Stephanie puts herself in danger to put someone else over, and so she tapped out to the armbar. I could definitely have not used the part where she gets out of the armbar at one point, or like fights out of it, because I just feel like you're stretching belief a little bit too much. But again, it's one of those, like the Hogan Rock thing. I think it's just one of those great sports entertainment matches. It's when sports entertainment is done at its peak, is matches like this.
I'd go so far as to say, had that headlined, I don't think anybody would have complained. It's a really fun match,
especially considering how the
Roman
and Brock match goes, where it's like it's just a massive middle finger of like, you waited 3 years for this and screw you again, like,
I mean, WrestleMania 34 is a it's kind of like an archetype to what the 2-night WrestleManias have since become, in that the first half of WrestleMania 34 is actually really good. Like, you have this match kind of being the main event of the first good half of WrestleMania 34. But you get this, and you get Charlotte and Asuka had a great women's title match earlier. I think there was some other like cool matches in between that as well. But then you get the second half of WrestleMania where you get like the Nicholas thing, and
I will say this till I'm blue in the face. 2-night WrestleManias suck. You can't convince me otherwise. They're not good. They're never good.
Half of them are great.
That's the fucking problem. Maybe it should just be one night.
I think if we go back to the discussion we had before about like if you were to split WrestleMania into 2 nights, how would you have balanced out the cards? I think that we had decided on the Rousey match being the main event of night 1, right? It had to be either that or the Charlotte Asuka, I would think.
You'd think so, yeah, because that was I don't think we would have gone with Shinsuke and AJ being the main event of the other one, so, which is definitely in the bad half of that show as well.
Yeah. Which sucks because they're great, but such is life.
So we put a hold on my number 9 and my number 8. I am assuming we're not going to when it comes to my number 7. I love the match in general. I love how it ends. I love pretty much everything that led up to it, even though like some of it was kind of messed up along the way, and it definitely didn't go the way that they had hoped originally, and then afterward it was like, all things kind of worked out for most people, like outside of Mr. Kennedy. But the moment, since I said myself, since the moment itself, I'm going moments instead of just matches. I have listed down as Run Robinson Run. WrestleMania 24. You get your main event of Undertaker and Edge. All the feud stuff, the Money in the Bank cash in, the title changes, all that, it was a bumpy ride, but you get to the Edge heads and Edge, and you're doing this whole thing where the referee takes a bump, and the coolest referee spot in WrestleMania history for sure is Charles Robinson running down that ramp. And it's just like, come on, like, get there. He slides in the ring, 1, 2, and it's just enough time that Edge is able to kick out. I fucking love that segment. And this was the first Mania that I was watching after coming back to watching wrestling that I was like fully dedicated to, because I had watched WrestleMania 23, but I was still like not 100% invested at that point. I was like I had watched it live. I'm pretty sure on like, some kind of streaming site or something, WrestleMania 23. And I'm pretty sure that I might have watched a little bit of WrestleMania 22 even, maybe, or something. I don't know for sure, but like by 24, I knew everybody. I was dedicated to everything. I had the website like in the mix already, I think. I followed the story from the start with the whole Money in the Bank thing. And of course, Undertaker and Edge, 2 of my favorites of all time. It ends in the happy moment and stuff. All the, the match itself is really great. It's one of the best championship matches in WrestleMania in my mind, but that moment felt so like above the norm to have that kind of like dramatic run and all. And I remember that just being one of those things where I'm like, fuck, man, I am so invested in this that it was a great like Smark out moment, you should say.
You know, and I want to say that's one of the best matches in Mania, let alone the streak, let alone just all of it. Like, that's a really, really good match. And I'll be honest, if my list was just moments, Robinson running was one of the ones that I considered for a list of just moments.
So number seven's on your answer?
Yeah. I wasn't going to add too much to it because it's one of those ones which I know is a great WrestleMania main event, but like it's never left an impression on me. The Undertaker and Edge main event for some reason.
I think I'm more flabbergasted in recent years because they said that there was thought of Edge winning, and like to me at the time, like it never crossed my mind that Edge might win. You know?
To me, it was very much like, yeah, they could go in that direction and they could have the heels help him win and all, but come on, Undertaker's going to win. It's like there was very
a few
little
years there where Taker just wanted to lose. I think
maybe they put over Orton or
like he wanted to put over Angle in 06. You know, there was just a few years there where that happened. But yeah, great moment. I guess I can say my number 7. I don't know if this will be on Callum's list. I'm almost certain it's not on Tony's. Another one of those, this match changes the way wrestling, and this at this point I have to say wrestling, is performed. Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat.
Holy shit, my number 7 is Randy Savage versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Let's go. Yeah. All right. Because honestly, it's a match that, so when I first saw it in 04. And it had like the legend of, you know, John Henry's hammer kind of deal. This is the match you need to see if you're a fan of wrestling. And my thought at first was like, oh, that was it? Because I was just so used to the modern style, and I was also only 11, so I wasn't going to be blown away by something just because of its reputation. But as I've watched it more in recent years, you go, okay, what stands out about this match is watch the whole card for WrestleMania 3, and then watch this match, and it's like, oh, this match is in color while everything else is in black and white. Yeah. Got it. That's what this match is.
It's a great way of describing it. It's like this match is like seemingly dropped out of like the early 2000s into the later 1980s for some reason. I mean, it's just the fact that it has a bit like the lesser effect to me than it used to, because this kind of just feels like a lot of what the NWA was doing at this point in time was similar to this kind of match, even though there's a lot more intricacy to it. And as I say, it's definitely not up to the standards that we see nowadays by any stretch of the imagination. But I think you just look at it and you just see like this weird once in a lifetime glimpse into what the future's going to be for pro wrestling. Like, this is, as Rob says, this is your trying to describe it, like your the VCR to your Betamax or anything along those lines, or your this is this is the. I'm trying to think of the comparison to.
It's
everyone
like an
else
NES to a PlayStation 2. It's
everyone
such
was using
an
floppy
upgrade.
disks while they were using USBs, that kind of thing. It's just like it's all that other stuff. It's it's just a microcosm of what wrestling would eventually end up being, taken to another level. But I like the fact that this is kind of like one of those archetype matches to what you can kind of pin a lot of today's wrestling on, whereas all the other stuff is very much forgotten about, really, or at least like not followed through on nowadays.
It's a game-changing moment.
Yeah.
It's, it's similar to like when you watch certain things like the Undertaker Foley Hell in a Cell, where you're like, okay, there's a level of violence that we just upgraded to, now we've broken through that barrier and there's a new standard that you can be comparing things to. Because Savage and Steamboat is not a match that I ever feel like going back and rewatching. But like you said, if you watch the rest of that card, it's god awful garbage. And then you see Savage Steamboat and you're like, well, at least they had a good match. And then you think more about it and you're like, oh, they didn't have a good match on that card. They had a blowout match on that card compared to the rest of the other things. And if you put yourself back in that time frame, you're shitting your pants at how good this is,
It really is one of the best matches of all time, still to this day. Although it loses its footing every year because of how we've progressed. But this is such an important match. And I would advise everybody, watch it at least once.
Another good comparison, if you look at the visual effects of, well, I would say today's movies, but most movies today, they end up having shitty CGI from overworking the artists. The good CGI of today's visual effects, and you compare it to Star Wars, the original one. Yeah, the original Star Wars looks janky in comparison. But you go back to the 70s, mind-blowing. That's kind of like that.
And I want to say I've made a late change to my list, and this will now be the only WrestleMania 3 representation, because on a personal level, I think it just means more. And there were other matches that we're just going to bump Hogan slamming Andre off the list.
Yeah, I'll talk about it on mine. My number 6, again, moments rather than matches for me. I'm sorry, I love you.
That's close for me.
Has lost all meaning for me because of Ric Flair's fucking inability to stay out of the wrestling ring. Otherwise, yes, it would be near the top of the list.
There are a lot of things that the moment that should have ended something gets screwed up in the future because of, like, look at Shawn Michaels ending his career, WrestleMania 26, and it's like, you went out with a highlight, great match with Undertaker, real definitive tombstone, and then you wrestle that crown jewel match, and it's like it's bald Shawn Michaels and an injured Triple H, and Kane dropping his mask and its wig, and like it shouldn't have happened.
It's funny. Here's why I forgive that match more than anything Flair's done, because even with all that working against it, Shawn was still the best part
Shawn
of the
still
match.
kept it together, yeah. Whereas Ric Flair was like, that was such a good send off to him. He had the whole, if you lose your next match, you're going to retire. So he was up against people like, United States champion MVP at the Royal Rumble and all this. And like, some of those matches felt like he could potentially lose, but we all sort of assumed he would lose at WrestleMania. And for you to go out against Shawn Michaels, he's got a connection with him. Shawn Michaels is arguably the greatest in-ring performer of all time. Michaels didn't have anything else going on that got in the way of having him in that match. So he gets a highlighted spot at Mania. It all makes perfect sense. And they induct him into the Hall of Fame, and he gets to have this moment, and it ends with, I'm sorry, Rick, but you wanted me to give it to you and to not like pity you as the old man. I love you, but here's a super kick, and I'm going to pin you. Such a perfect way to end his career. And then you go, 16 years after that, not 20 years, quite yet. And the TNA stuff and the AEW stuff and that match that he most recently had, Ric Flair's last match, where
that was not
it's a fucking travesty how he crapped all over this just because he couldn't stay away. But the moment itself is so good. And I mean, they've parodied it over the years now at this point, like the Sting match with the Young Bucks, I'm not sorry, I hate you, I think is what they had said. The moment, though, fantastic. One of the best WrestleMania moments ever.
Yeah, so it is like, it does have that iconic feel to it, but again, it's just, well, I guess I will mention it now. What would have been number one on my list can't be number one on my list because of things that happened post that WrestleMania. So it's kind of one of those ones that unfortunately time hasn't been kind to.
Yeah, WrestleMania 20 is not going to be on my list.
Yeah, okay, so I'll say this for WrestleMania 20. I almost, as a whole, put the whole thing because it's John Cena's first singles championship win. It's Rock's last match. It's the stuff with Brock and Goldberg. Like, it really is a pivotal night. But then you got that. What would have been one of the most iconic moments forever played in the history of forever is shit because Benoit's a murderer and he went out like a monster. So, yeah, you're not going to hear about WrestleMania 20 beyond this.
Well, neither of you have the Flair and HBK on your list, right?
No.
So what's your number 6, Rob?
My number 6 is WrestleMania 35. Women headline WrestleMania, quote unquote, Monday. And it's the final one night WrestleMania. This was such an important night. And the thing about this was the women earned it. Yes, it was total PR from presentation, but it was like, it's okay because Becky is in here and she's legitimately over as all hell. Ronda's Ronda. They were going to shoehorn Charlotte in there because that was her spot to begin with. But it felt so organic and so genuine. And you crowned this genuine babyface as your undisputed women's champion. And more than that, because I just mentioned I hate 2-night WrestleManias, it's the last one-night show. And yes, it does go long, maybe because Triple H and Batista went long, who knows. But damn it, I still say it wasn't as long as what we now have. And the flow of WrestleMania was never the same. Not only because of COVID, but because you didn't have that awesome NXT takeover the day before Mania. Now you're hyped. And oh my God, I'm going to spend all day watching WrestleMania. And it's okay because it's Mania. I don't like the current setup. I miss the one night setup. And Becky Lynch headlines WrestleMania. It's a beautiful kind of send off to what WrestleMania used to be.
PR wise, that's always going to be one of their top moments. But what takes me out of putting that on my list
is it the match is shit?
I don't like the match. I hate the ending with the Ronda's shoulder being up, and I hate
Don't worry, we'll get back around to that in a singles match.
And I hate that the singles match never mattered to me. I don't know how many times I've been like, I don't want to see it again. It just doesn't. Becky beating her by herself. She already beat her. Whatever. I hated Flair being shoehorned in there as well. I know that was like, it was so supposed to be Flair versus Rousey, obviously. And Becky was supposed to have the Survivor Series match and then move on. And, Becky's popularity just saved them from having people boo that.
You could have ended up in a Triple H Roman Reigns situation.
Yeah. That could have been a real, like, wow, you finally have the Women WrestleMania main eventing. And people are like, Charlotte beating Ronda. And we want Becky, and, that kind of thing. But if they tweaked a couple little things to that, then I think that it would be. But it misses out on being even in my honorable mentions.
Yeah, I wasn't going to be close to including that one, just because the match isn't a very good quality, and I don't know. I'm in disagreement with Rob. It just there was such a long show. It just took by the time you get to that one, it was just.
There's still 7 hours. I promise. There's still 7 hours.
Yeah, but it's split over 2 nights, so it's 2 3-hour shows. I can deal with two 3.
No, they're 2 7-hour shows. Like, it's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, but I don't. Yeah, I don't watch the pre-show, so it's fine. So.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
Number 6, going pretty recent. Maybe this is recency bias kicking in, but it's Sami Zayn pins Jey Uso, WrestleMania 39, Night 1 main event.
That is another really beautiful thing, and you know why? Because I think it was one of the best executions of a 2-night main event format, where it's like,
Yeah, they flopped on the second one.
That's where it screws it all up for me, because that's the quickest it goes from being one of the best WrestleMania moments of all time to fuck that to me. Within 24 hours, it's immediately lost all its favor for me.
I mean, it doesn't ruin just how good I think this moment is and the way the match comes together. The whole story they told with Sami Zayn, of course, I think that it's still a bit janky because in my headcanon, Sami Zayn will have won and lost the World Championship by this point in like the span of like a week, 2 week period to Roman Reigns. But what ends up happening is that they move into the tag team title picture. You've been telling the whole story between Sami and Jay in particular through months and months and months. You get to have the first ever real tag team main event. I don't count the WrestleMania one. It's the first real tag team match main event, at least for the titles as well. And then, yeah, the fact that it's Sami and Kevin who have had such a journeyed career throughout the independent scene, and they get to be like main eventing the show. Kevin Owens for the second time after main eventing a night on the previous year's WrestleMania as well, which was also on my potential like long list of ones. And the Usos, who are one of the greatest and most celebrated and consistent tag teams in WWE's history, the fact they get this moment as well. And yeah, as a big fan of tag team wrestling in general, just to be able to see one of those matches main event and it being such a brilliant story told match, and the way that it ends with a lot of high drama and like Sami kicking out of the 1D and then hitting those 3 haluva kicks to get the victory, very similar in the way that his facial expressions were to when the first time that he won the NXT championship against Neville. I always just gives me like flashbacks to that one. So yeah, I just think that it was a really, really brilliantly told moment. And yeah, the moment is like him just winning it at the end and then celebrating with the tag titles, and even just like their entrances, because you could see that Sami and Kevin feeling like, oh, we've made it. Like this is the top for us. And yeah, it's just a really emotional moment.
Not for nothing. Way cooler, possibly, for the Usos, because Sami and Kevin could have always potentially made it. But the Usos went from being like, okay, they're only ever seen on Superstars, to grinding and becoming the main event of WrestleMania. Really cool experience all the way around.
You mean like in general, they could have made it as potentially for single stars, but there was no way for
as
the Usos.
Single stars.
Yeah,
they would have eventually made it. There was the Usos as a tag team. Like that's the dream.
That's one of the reasons why I think that the 2-night WrestleMania can work out, because you get the option to do some things like that. Like you can check off giving Bianca and Sasha the first main event night, whereas like they never would have gotten that opportunity if it was one night, you know?
I definitely see the benefits. I'm just saying they've never effectively used it to the point where I'm like, yay, please keep doing this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Zayn and KO winning the tag titles not on my list. But on that night, it was fucking great. So you guys might have this one on your list though. Yeah, it's kind of deviating a little bit from my not much focused on matches, but it is still the moment itself. Stone Cold dripping blood, not tapping out to Bret Hart in the submission match at WrestleMania 13 and just passing out. The double turn, the match itself, of course, is fantastic. It's one of those, like, if you're going to get somebody to watch wrestling and they're not familiar with it, that's one of my go-to ideas of like, I'll suggest this one to them. But that moment in and of itself is just one of those most iconic moments in wrestling history. You got that shot of the blood dripping down Stone Cold's face. Is like, they used that on every episode of Raw for God knows how many years, and they still show it when they're not afraid to show blood.
Callum, is it on your list?
Yes, it is on my list, yeah.
Where is it on your list?
It's a couple of places down.
Yeah, it's my number 4 as well.
Yeah, it's my number 3, so yeah, so it will be high up there. But I guess we talk about it. It's one of the great, I think,
That's the only 3 for so far, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things that's the Mandela effect. And it's about those ideas of like the double turn. Like this match isn't a double turn.
No.
Like Bret Hart goes into this match as a heel and Stone Cold's the babyface going into the match, but it's been a double turn story, so I can get that point. But it's just the fact that like Bret is clearly a heel going into this match already. He's already like on the Raws building up to it, because I've gone back and watched a few bits and pieces about him like bitching and moaning about the way things were going, and on those lines, Stone Cold just being Stone Cold. But just the match itself is great. It's violence, but in a controlled violence. But then just the shot of him, the blood dripping down his head, and him refusing to give up, just passing out in the middle of the ring. So you get the moment of Bret winning, and that propels him on to winning the title. But it's Stone Cold is like made as a main event character from this moment, and yeah, I think that it's absolutely brilliant way of like how you elevate a guy in defeat, like taking him to the next level through Bret Hart doing it. It's the last kind of in a year which turned very sour for Bret Hart by the end of it. It's the
it's Bret's last good
thing in
moment.
WWE, really. Yeah.
Yeah, like
I mean, you talk about like the Hart Foundation stuff was all great as well. It's not like he had a great run leading into what happened in Montreal,
right,
but like in terms of just like iconic moment, a single iconic moment, this was the last one for Bret in WWE, really.
The last thing that he probably can celebrate.
Yeah, like if you cut off the career in like a documentary format, you're probably showing highlights of the Hart Foundation, but this is the last full thing that you show because it's perfect. And it's, to echo what Tony said, it's the match you show people who don't know how they feel about wrestling. I don't know how much you can show them in 2024 because it'd be disingenuous to say, oh, this is what you're getting, because it ain't.
Yeah.
But you can just be like, sit them down and say, this is how good it can be in the right circumstances.
It is crazy that also, like, this is WrestleMania 13, and this is before the real explosion comes, like in the year or so that follows it. But it's kind of, this is the embers of it. This is almost, you could kind of say that this match and just the real birth of the Stone Cold character is the embers of WWE's greatest ever period in terms of popularity.
Yeah, this like kicked it off in a lot of ways. Star-making performance, great match, like all across the board. This is just a fantastic.
It's the thing that makes people think they want to watch WrestleMania 13 when they really don't. They just need to see the
They just want to. They just watch this match and then turn it off before Sid shits himself.
Nobody's really going to be like. I mean, as much as I'm a fan of Sid and I'm a fan of Undertaker, it's like, yeah, that match is not the thing that you're going to.
It's a great visual. Undertaker with the winged eagle doing the pose at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this Bret and Austin, one of the best matches of all time.
I doubt that there's many people that are sitting there going, you know, my go-to WrestleMania match is that Chicago street fight.
You know what? Fun match, delivers exactly what it needs to. And for anyone who does go back and watch, you'd be surprised at how important Ahmed Johnson was to that show.
You'd be surprised about a lot of things with Ahmed, I think, if you go back and watch. But that is my number 5. That's Rob's number 4 and Callum's number 3. What's your number 5, Callum? Or Rob? Whoever wants to go.
I'll go. My number 5 is I know I've been doing a lot of slash this for the entire list, but it's the streak, and if you're gonna hold me to one moment, it's Brock Lesnar ending the streak. The streak
so you like that we're on the worst timeline.
The streak is one of the most important things in WrestleMania, and Brock Lesnar defeating The Undertaker at WrestleMania is one of the most legitimately visceral reactions I've ever experienced as a wrestling fan, where everybody just goes, and not in like the way that we did last year for Cody, where I think a lot of people were just like, yeah, why didn't they do this? It was just like, wait, what? Hold on, what the fuck? I was watching with some friends, and everybody just started screaming. Like you would have thought everybody's mother got shot.
Heard that you're watching like footage of like 9/11 or something.
Yeah, because it was really just like wait, what the fuck do you mean the Undertaker lost? Because, and I wasn't doing the podcast with you yet, but this is one of those things that if I had been, I would have told you the build to this match sucked and led no doubt in anyone's imagination that Undertaker was going to beat Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, up to this point, was really just a run-of-the-mill heel. He was, a big name, of course, and he's Brock Lesnar, but he had been trading wins with people like Cena. He had been trading wins with Hunter. Like, Brock wasn't doing anything of significance, and then he breaks the streak, and suddenly he's unstoppable. And I think it set up Lesnar to have the, monster run he had. But more than anything, fucking killed the Undertaker. Like, the streak was the last thing the Undertaker had, to the point where it was the story of the previous years with Triple H and CM Punk, where it was, you've got one thing left, and when I take it from you, you're gone. And while that's not what happened, it might as well have been, right?
Yeah, it's not like he followed it up with like the most amazing things afterward.
Like, he had some fun stuff with Wyatt, but it was never groundbreaking. He had a fun match with Shane, but I think we all wish we never had to sit through that. The Roman match, I can make the argument for that being one of the worst matches I've ever seen. And a heartbreaking match. Like, there was never anything that was, oh, I'm so glad you're still here after this. So this is a huge moment, man.
That I hate with a passion, so there was not a chance I was putting it on my list.
I mean, I had it like long listed as well, but just along the lines of like the match itself is bad because Undertaker's concussed within a few minutes going into it, and it just like sours the entire match. And yeah, in hindsight, it may not have been the best time to break the streak, but realistically, it's almost like it was that weird situation where you probably shouldn't have needed to end the streak or have Brock Lesnar be the one to take the streak, but they'd done such a poor job booking Brock Lesnar on his way back to the company that they had to rehab him by having him beat The Undertaker.
I mean, hindsight 2020, if you just wait one more year, you have Roman and Bray as great options.
Right.
But it is just a case of, I think Undertaker as a performer was done by this point anyway. I think the Punk match was the last real hurrah that he had. And I always look at that match, like the Punk match, as like, that's Undertaker's final great real match. And then from that point on, it's just diminishing return after diminishing return.
And I don't even put that in high regard. Even being there, I was like, it's fine. It's like, Undertaker's got a cool entrance and he'll beat Punk at the end of it. Like, it didn't resonate with me all that much. So to me, it was like, I look at The Undertaker's past like 10 years worth of WrestleManias and I'm like, I would have done 7 of those differently.
Well, that's why I also had just in general, the streak. Like, the streak was going to be on my list of WrestleMania things because the streak became a championship.
Yeah.
And it was used very effectively and nobody will ever duplicate it.
The only person that can
Bianca's
do
got a
any
shot.
of it right now is Bianca, yeah.
Bianca's got a shot.
Got a feeling that's not
even
a
with
priority
that
they're going to book.
The aura, because none of that was supposed to happen. We weren't fucking thinking about a streak in 94 or 95 or whatever. It was just, hey, he's fighting King Kong Bundy. I guess he's going over. Like.
I mean, I'm more of the opinion now that Bianca's got a good chance of not emulating the streak, but going on the equivalent of it for a little while. Because I assumed that she was going to lose to Tiffany Stratton at this year's WrestleMania, but no, she's probably going to win the tag titles instead.
Yeah, it looks like they're going
Bianca. They're not like, we've got like this whole thing with the 6-pack challenge for the men's titles, and they just aren't really doing anything yet to confirm the women's match.
Well, Asuka's hurt now.
Is she actually like hurt?
Looks like it, but we'll find out more.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, I think if worst comes to worst, I'll just plug in Dakota Kai in that spot instead.
Maybe. Or do the thing that they did with Ronda and Shayna, where she's in the match, but she doesn't do a goddamn thing. That was annoying. So number 5, Rob, is Undertaker's streak ends by Brock Lesnar. Callum, what's your number 5?
Well, it definitely won't be on either lists. Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho from WrestleMania 19.
If I could have just put a list of Shawn Michaels, like the list would just be, Shawn Michaels.
There's something in particular about this match because it's my first WrestleMania, is WrestleMania 19, and I almost just wanted to tentatively just say WrestleMania 19 in general because I think it's the greatest WrestleMania of all time. It's that's part of the bias about it being your first one, and so it just feels different in that regard. But just up and down the card, it's just amazing. And again, there's matches on it that I can't really enjoy as much nowadays with Hulk Hogan versus Vince McMahon and all that stuff. But
even fucking Lesnar now, like.
But Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho is. I almost give it the opinion of it's one of those matches that cemented me as a wrestling fan for life. In terms of, I was only less than a year in watching properly wrestling, and so this one comes on, and I get the WrestleMania 19 DVD. I don't watch this live because it was the UK, and I was never watching things live at that point. But I get the DVD, watch this match over and over again. It's such a well-told story as well. It's such a great build from even before the Royal Rumble. It's pretty much built from December up until WrestleMania itself, and the whole story of Chris Jericho wanting to emulate Shawn Michaels and want to be the next Shawn Michaels, but he stopped being it and started to be the first Chris Jericho instead. The build is fantastic. There's some janky moments in it. I don't think you needed to have Chris Jericho hit Stacey Keebler with a steel chair at any point in this build for it to get some kind of more intensity to it. But I think the match itself, it's Shawn Michaels a great match back because it's first WrestleMania match after his long-term hiatus. He gets all the pomp and circumstance. He has the confetti cannons coming down to the ring. Gets the big usual. Well, he's the kind of old school now entrance of the pyro going on in the background of the ring as he does the HBK pose in the middle. The match is great. A whole story of Jericho just getting the better of Michaels in many cases. He hits his own sweet chin music in it as well. And then you do the moment of Shawn Michaels just rolling him up but getting a flash pin himself. Actually, Michaels doesn't. I think he hits sweet chin music in this one, but he doesn't hit the proper sweet chin music in it. He just gets a flash super kick at one point. But then Michaels rolls up Jericho, gets the victory, and then they do the moment of they're going to hug it out, and Jericho's going to show respect to Michaels, and he just kicks him in the balls and walks away. It was just. Yeah, this was just absolutely top grade wrestling. It's not my favorite match of all time, but it's one of the more pivotal matches in my early wrestling fandom.
Fantastic match. Absolutely would be on my list of I don't know how it would place, but if I had a top 25 WrestleMania matches, it'd be on there for sure.
I almost put from WrestleMania 19. Because there's a few moments you can go from the show. I almost went with Austin and his retirement, and
that was long listing one for me as well.
Yeah, that's WrestleMania 19. It's arguable that you could say WrestleMania 19. I'm gonna just say a WrestleMania in a couple spots. So we'll see.
So then that switches us around to number 4. I don't know if maybe this might be on your list for me, for my list at least. But Seth Rollins having the heist of the century is the phrasing that we've been using over the years. Cashing in Money in the Bank and stealing the championship from Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. It's not the setup that WWE wanted, and it's not, you look back on how this whole Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar thing has been a massive. You know what? Probably the best thing I could say is, for a comparison, the way that Lesnar beating Taker to be set up, and the Goldberg thing, and Owens, and Roman Reigns, and Batista, and the Royal Rumble, and everything leading up to the point that we're at now. This decade that has been the Brock Lesnar transitioning, Roman Reigns transitioning to he's the best of all time type of thing has been as problematic as the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, where it's like, you just didn't plan this out and we know where you were going, but the road to get to where you wanted to go was so problematic and I don't like it. But the moment itself of Rollins cashing in that Money in the Bank, even if it just holds a lot of things off into the future and they might have maybe been better off just having Roman beat Brock and then just that's it for a lot of other people's careers. We never had that before. There was always the idea that people could cash in the Money in the Bank at WrestleMania and nobody had the balls to do it. Well, yeah, in kayfabe. Rollins isn't even in the match and he comes in at the end of the match when it's still going on, which I don't think at that point that had happened either.
That had never been done. That established, he was the first person since Edge to establish a new rule. Like, oh shit, you can cash in mid-match.
Instead of it being like you had to wait until after the match was over to cash in, like, you know, Cena's just one elimination chamber and now Edge can cash in. It was like, no, you can just be inserted into the match.
Which I think people have already taken for worse. You
know?
And
like a lot of things with Money in the Bank, it's been kind of bastardized and problematic. But the moment of Rollins doing that was not anything at all that I was thinking was going to happen. And, you know, you're sitting around with a bunch of friends and you're all talking about like the potential of like, okay, well, this is how this is going to go. And I think that Randy Orton's going to beat Seth Rollins and whatever. Oh, cool. They did that RKO. That's a really cool spot. Whatever. Oh, it's the end of Rollins for the night. It's like, he's not going to cash in Money in the Bank. Like that'll maybe happen at SummerSlam or something. And the moment his music hits, it's just like, oh shit, you know? So I thought that was just amazing.
And in hindsight, like, we can look back at it now and say, oh, we were in one of those lame Lesnar runs. But like that had never been done before. So that was actually kind of intriguing that like Brock was just not showing up. It was like, oh, okay, it's an event again to see the champion. And it was like, oh, well, what are they gonna do with Roman? People really aren't feeling him. And they got out of it so perfectly, and it is one of the best moments of WrestleMania history. It nearly missed my list.
Yeah, it was on like my long list because, like I say, it's definitely a cool moment. But as someone who has never really connected super heavily to Seth Rollins, that I think that it's a cool moment, but not one that like personally has much meaning to me.
Here's a little fun, just oddball side question. If you can put Money in the Bank in the past and you can do the whole like, okay, there's a Money in the Bank person. We already did this discussion before about like who would have won Money in the Bank. Like 2 years ago or something, we did it. But ignoring even like who we might have picked for those things, who do you think could have been a really cool person to cash in at their Money in the Bank at WrestleMania in years past? Do you think that there could have been a really cool alternative to like, instead of Hulk Hogan cashing in on Yokozuna, for instance, and doing that whole thing, like could there have been like a Owen cashes in on Brett type of a thing? Or
that's the
like
one that comes to mind immediately.
You know, maybe Shawn Michaels fights Diesel and, you know, Diesel retains and then somebody cashes in on Diesel, or like the Randy Savage, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Sid thing. Like anybody that stands out to you that would have been like, oh, that would have been a really cool end to WrestleMania 16 or something. I don't know.
I think like you just hit the nail on the head. I think Owen, instead of staring, you know, forlorn at his brother, he can run down with a briefcase, kick his leg out of his leg again, and now you've got Owen does it again. He beat him twice in one night. How can you argue that he's not the best part?
I don't know if I'd do that after what happened at WrestleMania 9. To just do that kind of thing.
In my world,
again.
that doesn't happen.
Yeah. But, I'm trying to think if there's anyone that's like stands out. I'd say maybe. I mean, you couldn't really do it at WrestleMania 11 because the world title match wasn't even the main event. So
right.
I don't think you want to do it for that one. I It'd be quite funny if the end of the Iron Man match was just like, I don't know, Savio Vega running down and winning the world title.
Aldo Montoya, right?
Yeah.
I did think about that because that would make the most sense in terms of when do you attack somebody? Well, they just wrestled an hour. I think, if you send Diesel out with a chair or something, and he took his best friend's dream away.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really think of one that's like super catching, other than like maybe if you were to do WrestleMania 2000 has a shitty ending in terms of the way the Fatal 4-Way comes down. Like, if somehow you get Stone Cold Steve Austin healthy to be for that one, then maybe him just running down at the end and cashing in or whatever. But yeah, I think that for the most part, it was like it was one of those moments where it was the only real way to get out of that shitty situation they booked themselves in. And it was a perfect storm of this just all comes together perfect at this point. I like to think that most times, well, at least in the old WrestleManias, they kind of did mostly the right thing in terms of who was going to win the main event.
Well, I think we've skipped over the obvious, though. Whether it's WrestleMania 4 or 5 or 6, DiBiase has to cash in Money in the Bank and finally win the world title.
That could have been, one of the options. Another one I was just thinking was maybe Shawn would have been okay with having that rematch with Brett at WrestleMania 13 if he would have known ahead of time that Austin would cash in at the end of the match and screw Brett and win the title.
A lot of fun little things like that. When you think about how random little tricks like this are so commonplace now,
and how a couple little rule changes everything, because you go into Hogan wouldn't have won those Royal Rumbles if it was for a title shot. Who would have won?
Or you go into something like, realistically, how many of these Hogan main events would have been 4-ways instead of trying to shoot for a double main event? Probably would have just been a 4-way or a 3-way.
Or the 2-night thing, and yeah. All right, well, that's my number 4. Rob's number 4 we already talked about, Bret Hart and Stone Cold. Callum, your number 4?
I don't know whether you want to put a pin in it or not, but it's WrestleMania.
I could put a pin in it.
Okay, we can leave it for a little bit.
Not on your list at all, Rob, right?
Not on my list at
all. So we're back around to my number 3, which is Hogan slams Andre.
Which again, I will say this right now, would have been my number 3 post. I swapped it out for the ladder match.
From Mania 10?
From Mania 10, yeah.
Which, like I said, if I would have put matches on here, WrestleMania 10's ladder match would have been on the list in some fashion. I don't know where, because Hogan slamming Andre doesn't register to me on a personal level in the same way as it did from people watching it back then, because that happened, before I was really truly cognizant of stuff. But I just think it's the WrestleMania, the image. That's why it's the thumbnail for this one. The whole Cena beating JBL thing, it cements Hogan in a way that he had already been the guy, but it was that put him at a completely different level. WrestleMania 3, of course, has all these records. There's so many people there. It's a passing of the torch moment. It is a good spot when it comes to back then, the way that things happen. They're not flipping around and doing crazy shit like Darby Allin does these days, but Hogan slamming Andre is just too iconic for me to ignore. But I didn't want to give it 1 or 2.
Moment. If we were going from a strictly if we were objective and not throwing any of our own opinions, probably number 1.
Right.
It's the thing that WrestleMania kind of built off of.
So that would have been your number 3. Go ahead, Callum. What were you saying?
I was going to say, objectively speaking, as Rob says, that is it's the moment that they repeat and go back to over and over again. But yeah, there's no way it's going on my list because it's I'd argue there is at least an argument there that it's the worst match in WrestleMania history.
No, there's not much of an argument there.
Worst main event, at least when it comes to some of that stuff.
Garbage.
I'd still say that this is potentially the worst one because it's just a case that the main event there should be a different standard for main events, and so the fact that this is literally just for the most part, Andre puts him in a bear hug for like 9-10 minutes, and then there's the slam and the leg drop. That's basically it.
I still would rather watch that than some of the like Snooki in the ring and like.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I could see that argument. Yeah.
You know what's one of the worst, like most unbelievable spots in that match? Hogan tries to pile drive Andre on concrete. It's like, what are you doing?
So what did you go with for your number 3 instead? Is the ladder match?
Ladder match from WrestleMania 10 is my favorite match. Full stop. It's the match that I watch. I've seen that match more than any other match. It's the match I will watch right now if I'm really like sad about something and need like an immediate, okay, this will bring me back, to level. Like it's this match. I can almost call it spot for spot. I watch it every year as my first wrestling match for the year to watch as soon as all the New Year's festivities are done. This match is fucking amazing. Like it's again, it's one of those things where yes, there have been more spectacular ladder matches, but like Savage and Steamboat, this changes the way we look at what can be done in a wrestling ring. And it wasn't the first ladder match in WWE history, but it was the first that most people saw.
First televised.
And it changes so much because now you're thinking, oh, well, maybe you can put so-and-so in a ladder match. In a time where all you really had was cage matches, this was another gimmick that you could utilize. And it's Shawn Michaels' coming out party. Before this, it was the Stuff is the Rockers, a match with Tito Santana, and a match with Tatanka. And yes, he was Intercontinental Champion against Tatanka, but it's still Tatanka. So, this is the match that puts Shawn Michaels on the map as show stealer. This is the match that puts Michaels on the map as, okay, he cannot be ignored. It's a very important match. It's just a very good match. It's just my favorite.
You should try to one year make this your like you say, you watch it during the New Year's. You should try to sync up him winning the match with Happy New Year.
That would be a lot of fun, as like watching it as the final match for 2024, let's say. By the way, 30 years ago. That's crazy.
It is cool too that if you say the ladder match, most people will think of this one.
Yeah, because we've had triangle ladder matches, but
we're gonna have 12 people in one WrestleMania this year.
Yeah, but it's like this is still the ladder match.
Yeah, as I say, it is an excellent match, and it's a real kind of archetype for what the ladder match would be in WWE moving forward. I think it's one of those ones that gets, obviously it's revered for very good reason, but then when I think ladder match in WrestleMania, I think TLC 2001 is the one that immediately goes to mind. So
let me tell you what my number 2 is. You'd be surprised, but it's actually TLC 2.
Well, let's talk about that. If you don't have anything else to say about the ladder match, Callum.
Oh, no, I can move on from that now.
TLC 2 is part of what is maybe objectively the greatest WrestleMania of all time. And it's this absolute car crash, crazy. How are 2/3 of these guys still wrestling? Yeah, some of them ain't doing so hot. But like this match is great. It's so much fun. It's You've got Lita in there. You got Rhino. You got Spike. You got these three teams building off what they did at the last year's Mania. How many just repeat matches do they do at WrestleMania? There's not many. I think Cody and Roman is only going to be like the fourth singles match, just get a straight up repeat at WrestleMania back to back. This is a tag team ladder match, and they're just running it back because they're that damn good. And it's got the iconic spear, which is still replayed. They're not even in the company anymore, and I promise that'll be replayed for all of your WrestleMania highlight packages leading up to this year's event. It's an iconic match on an iconic show, and it's the end of the Attitude Era. Like, definitively, I think we can all say this show is the end of the Attitude Era. WCW's gone. Vince shakes Austin's hand. There's so much here, and it's such a special match, a special show.
Yeah, I mean, that match is just absolutely insane. In fact, there was like kind of in a way a bit of just a do what we did both at last year's WrestleMania and then at SummerSlam following it, and just take it up to another level. Yeah, they were going to extremes in this match that they hadn't been seen in WWE since the Foley and Undertaker Hell in a Cell match. It's some of these spots are just, I mean, they feel a bit more commonplace now because you do see it in AEW quite frequently, and I assume we will see some cool spots in the upcoming ladder match that we're going to get at WrestleMania. But yeah, this.
But they're all just
reckless.
trying to be these guys.
Yeah,
like that's the thing.
You can't really for these three. That's kind of like they are at a level of iconic in terms of their performance in this match was excellent. I mean, the thing from Tony mentioned earlier, the spear off the ladder, the like Bubba Ray going through like tons of tables on the outside. It's like and Matt Hardy just flying through loads of tables on the outside. Just the involvement of like Rhino and Spike Dudley and Lita in this as well. Just an absolutely insane match.
Not on my list, but hats off to everybody that was like, if you're looking for a great match to watch, you put that one on. You're not going to be in a bad spot whatsoever.
Not on your list, but if you had been watching at the time,
probably would have been. It'd
be very high up there.
Callum, you're number 2?
Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 21.
Figured that would be on your list.
So good.
For my money, the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. I think obviously it's got two of the best workers in my estimation of all time. And again, it's another one where the story in it is very good. They've been building up since the Royal Rumble. And then you have just two absolute beasts in the ring in terms of just their pure ability and a willingness to steal the show, just going out and having their first ever match with each other. And it's just an absolute epic, just some crazy spots like the moonsault to the outside and getting like caught up in the announce table, just the multiple throws and suplexes, the angle slam off the top rope with Michaels kicking out, like switching music with Angle just getting his shoulder up at like 2.999. Just and then the whole ending sequence just around Michaels battling to stay out of the ankle lock, and then he eventually does fall into the ankle lock and into the grapevines in, and Michael stays in it for about what must feel like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just in the ankle lock, just desperately trying to crawl towards the ropes. And eventually he's just forced to tap out, and it's just a match that I'll just go back and watch time and time again because it is just unbelievable how good this match was.
Another one that's not on my list, but you go back and you want to watch a great match. There you go. It's like you can't deny that, right? Anywhere in your mix, Rob?
I mean, it's in my heart. It's near the top, but it's not my number one. I can say that for a fact.
So my number 2 is one that we had put a pin in. Callum had it at number 4. Daniel Bryan wins the main event of WrestleMania 30.
But is that your number 1, Callum?
No, it's just number 4.
I've already said number 4. Yeah.
Just 2 seconds ago said he had it at number 4.
Because I'm just realizing, oh shit, I think Your number one is not anywhere near my list.
This is how WrestleMania should go. WrestleMania shouldn't necessarily be the end of everything all the time, and they can play around with stuff and start a feud instead of end it, and we've talked about that in recent episodes. But Daniel Bryan was the guy that should have ended that with the championship, and they had to be dragged kicking and screaming to get to that point, and they needed to. CM Punk needed to leave the company and open up space for the Triple H thing. And then they needed to have the whole WrestleMania thing. And you needed to shoehorn Daniel Bryan in through a whole second match concept and all. But as much as they were resistant to do that, they realized that they should listen to the fans. And it ends with the hero that everybody wants to win, holding up 2 championships and being the guy. And of course what followed afterward, that sucked. But this is one of those another proof of Cody's got to be Roman this year. You gotta do it,
Yeah, it's just a real just cathartic moment for fans that thought we weren't going to get this moment because of how they'd built up towards things, and they seemed just hell-bent on saying, "Oh, no, Batista's the babyface against Randy Orton." And then you finally have the Yes movement and the takeover of Raw, and then you get through Triple H, and you have that brilliant monster song building up Daniel Bryan's match with Triple H, which was just one of the best video packages they put together for WrestleMania. And there's a good number of those great video packages, but this one was great, one of the best ones. And then he beats Triple H in a better match than the main event, but it's the main event where you just have him just fight through all the adversity. He gets through the powerbomb, through the announced powerbomb / RKO through the announced table at one point, and then eventually forces Batista to tap out, gets the titles on top, the pyros going. It's just a really cool moment for a guy that we all wanted to get behind.
That follow through might be the reason why it's not near my list. Because I can objectively say it's such a great moment, but that follow up, man, and it's not on them, but it's still it's almost over as soon as it starts.
So that means we're down to our number ones, and I don't think that we are going to have all the same thing at number one by any means. I know that I have something that definitely is not going to be on your 2 lists for number one. So I'll just go ahead and say
I think I know what it is. Yeah, I think I know what it is anyway.
Oh, go ahead and guess.
Oh, it's the boyhood dreams come true for Shawn Michaels.
Ding.
Yeah. That almost made my number 9. I'll say that. But it's your definitive moment. I get it.
It probably wouldn't even be my number 69, but still.
That'd be a nice spot, though. Yeah, it's the end of every episode of Smack Talk. It's at one point it was my favorite match of all time. It's my favorite guy against my other basically favorite guy, because it was those 2 and Undertaker were in the 3 revolving spots for a long time. It's a great moment of the guy that wins the championship for the first time and all. It crosses off everything for me. Definitely not going to be on your 2 lists. I figured it wouldn't even be necessarily in the top 10 for either of you, but it's still if I think WrestleMania, I think of that moment more than anything.
It's iconic, and it's, for my money, it's still the way I want to see matches built, because it's just, hey, watch these athletes prepare for the biggest match of their lives. And I think sometimes that would serve the present day roster well. But no, this is not. It's not on my list.
No, it wouldn't be on my list either. I mean, as I say, it's still a great moment, and the
match is a bit of a slog.
Yeah. Oh, the match is terrible. I think the match is awful. I think it's your first 60-minute Iron Man match, and it's just a bad, really. Well, I say it's not a bad match, but it's a really boring match.
I would dare say they would have benefited from just letting them go in the ring, and
then just having them go 60 minutes
in the last 60 minutes.
Just say it's a 60-minute time limit. and then people would be less focused on it instead. But even still, I think that they didn't manage the time particularly well. But the actual moment, and then also the shots of like Michaels rappelling down from the rafters was also like that's a cool moment as well. So,
would you like to guess my number one, Callum?
It's the hardcore triple threat, right?
Oh well, there you go.
from WrestleMania 17.
Obviously.
I can't think of that one.
Tony, you want to take a guess?
There's not one that we already said clearly because
you would have said to put a pin in it. But you might have KofiMania.
No, he said he hasn't put that on the list.
Again, sorry, Kofi, but
I thought that we had put a pin in that for.
We put a pin in it for Callum. It's his number one.
Rob, you're give me like a 10-year span.
I'll give you this as a clue. How have we not spoken about this yet? Even from you.
Pete Rose.
It's not just like WrestleMania 1 with the main event of that, is it?
No, but I did briefly consider that for the number 10 spot. As I've said with 3 other things on this list, a match that changes the way matches are performed, it's Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in the best match ever at WrestleMania 25. It's what they think they're presenting every year, but they can't because there's only 2 people in the world who could have given you this. It's Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, and there's only one time in their lives where they could have done this, and that was during this era where Taker's actually a good worker now. Shawn's actually not a prick. They're both just out there trying to be, hey, let's have fun. Let's do things that like these younger guys just can't because they don't have the, for lack of a word, the clout to do it. I mean, everybody thinks they're doing fucking Undertaker and Shawn Michaels when they kick out of 25 finishers, but it was special then because it's Taker and Shawn at Mania. And I'll say it again, this changed the way WWE main events are presented, and it was on the middle of the card. The fucking card is headlined by a god-awful Triple H and Randy Orton match. They rectify it the next year, and I did, for the record, almost put the whole 4-year saga. But at the end of the day, this match is the definitive WrestleMania moment. It's the perfect bridge between classic and modern. You can't duplicate this. You can't recreate this feeling. Even the next year they tried to duplicate it, but it's not the same because you don't have all the perfect elements of it's Michael Cole, JR, and Jerry Lawler on commentary. Regardless of what you think about any of them currently, they were the 3 iconic voices in WWE, and they're all just calling the match straight. You've got Shawn actually being a bit of a arrogant heel in the build to this. You got the whole heaven and hell thing. It's a perfect match. It's a match that none of them should have ever tried to touch because it's just that good. And it's the number 1 WrestleMania moment for me because even though it's not my objective favorite match in terms of like comfort, it's maybe the best match WWE's ever put on.
I second pretty much everything that you just said.
Yeah, I won't speak then.
No, I would love to hear a contrarian opinion.
I think it's a little bit overrated.
I can understand why you would say that.
I think it's a very it's obviously it's a great match. I'm not going to say like it's not very good. It's definitely like a great epic match between those 2. But I don't know. I probably have. Well, I've said like things here as well. Like just personally, I've probably got like 5-10 matches that I probably prefer from WrestleManias beyond that one.
Do you think
I've never had the affinity towards the Undertaker in particular. It's just Undertaker's never done it for me, really. So,
do you think that it's hurt by the way that it's been talked about for the last?
No, I think it's hurt by the fact that WrestleMania 25 sucks.
I'll grant you that. It's not a good show, guys.
It's the absolute best thing or an absolutely terrible show.
For context, for those who don't know, WrestleMania 25 is legit the first Mania of the PG, no swearing, no bleeding WrestleMania, WWE. And it definitely is hurt by some of the other things on the show. And I think if I had my way, hindsight, they would never touch again. We wouldn't do the stuff with Triple H, and we wouldn't talk about it as much, because I think then it preserves as the best match that these two could have ever had. Let's talk about KofiMania, Kellen.
Yeah, my number one is KofiMania. So the reason for that is it's something like a case like having a huge investment in the career of Kofi Kingston going into this point. Obviously, the story they told was really good and does get you invested. But it's mainly just, I mean, I watch wrestling a lot, as you can probably tell.
What?
Nah.
And I love like so many different types of matches, and there's so many great matches out there. But there's very few times that I'm like edge of the seat, super invested in a match. And this might be the clearest example in my head of just watching a match and like, oh god, only one person can win this match. I didn't even feel this way about Cody and Roman. As bad as like I felt afterwards, because obviously it was still the wrong result. But this one, it just goes, there can only be one winner. But it's almost to WWE's like secret superpower is the fact that their booking over the course of their history has been so terrible that you know that even though there's supposed to be one outcome, you can't be certain they're going to give you that one outcome. And so you go into that match thinking, oh my god, they need to win. And so you're on every single fall that Brian's got over on Kofi, you're thinking, oh my god, are they going to end it? He hits the Psycho knee at the knee plus or whatever they used to call it then, gets a 2 count and puts in the label lock. Think, oh god, is he going to tap out? And you just have that urgency of thinking, this is the only company or the only promotion in the world that potentially take this moment away from Kofi Kingston. But they do follow through with it, and it's just an excellent moment of like the New Day celebrating with him, lifting up on the shoulders, replacing the Daniel Bryan Eco Championship with the classic WWE Championship. He gets to celebrate with his kids there as well. And it's one of those moments where you just go, okay, if WrestleMania 35 just ended there, then it would be then it'd be one of the greatest shows ever, but they had to continue, obviously. But yeah, it's just one of those moments that made me really have a strong feeling towards a particular match and a particular moment. So yeah, KofiMania is number one for me.
Absolutely fantastic. Happy moment. Good things are good.
See, it's weird for me because good things are good. And I do love the moment. But I'm so iffy, depending on the day, as to how I feel about the build. Because on one hand, they told the best story ever told by a tag team, which is, no, we do not have to break up for one of our guys to be the top guy. And in fact, we're going to help him get there and celebrate with him after. But at the same time, they went about it in such a weird way that technically the WWE Championship match isn't announced until like 3 days before Mania. And I know that this moment is so much bigger than any of that shit. I'm just giving you my perspective on it. But at the same time, I'm like, I had the opposite feeling where I didn't think WWE's booking was going to screw it up. I was like, oh, they bothered to put Kofi here? And he's up against Brian, who would lose to a fish if asked if he really wanted to. Yeah, they're definitely putting Kofi over. I think there's bits and pieces that they could have done to make it better. Like, I know Kofi's talked about there was a special entrance planned featuring, like, you know, elements of his heritage, and I think even a speech from his mother. I think that would have made it even more gripping. I think potentially the follow-through hurts it here for me as well. But no, I obviously know why it's the number one moment. It is an iconic moment. I think it's something that, for a brief moment in time, united everybody in the wrestling fandom.
So we're at a spot where I don't think that we could do a consolidation list because we are more.
Well, we told you off air several times.
Yeah, but I figured if we ended up having a lot of the things that were similar enough, we could have potentially done that. We do have some crossovers. We do have moments that if we approached the list differently, we would have potentially rearranged some things around and all. Like, yeah, I said before, like I would have put those two, the ladder match and the HBK Taker match on there.
By the way, this speaks to the subjective nature of lists, because I can name moments that constantly get played as great WrestleMania moments that we didn't even touch. We didn't touch Savage and Liz at WrestleMania 7. We didn't touch, Piper Brett. There is the WrestleMania 1 stuff that we didn't talk about. We could have picked out any spot from the Triangle Ladder match. Like there's so much great stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've got I'd say I had 30 things listed down on super long list, ranging from things like the Shane McMahon Coast to Coast on Vince McMahon in there, match the Linda standing
Linda McMahon
thing.
Stands up.
Yeah. I think the Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth reuniting at the end of WrestleMania 7. Well, not the end of WrestleMania 7, but the end of that match with the retirement match with Randy Savage.
I'll say this: I'm surprised this wasn't on Tony's list. We did not talk about Mike Tyson. We did not talk about Stone Cold winning the title.
My number 15 was Austin Era Has Begun.
Yeah, but I also had things like the other good thing that happened at WrestleMania 25 was Ricky Steamboat turning back the clock against Chris Jericho. Just they actually had they had a match afterwards, a Backlash thing. Had the Undertaker kick out in the end of an era match where you had Michaels super kicking him into the pedigree and everyone thinking, oh my god, they've just screwed Undertaker out of the streak that way, and him kicking out in the Hell in a Cell match. And I've got things like the greatest RKO of all time to Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 31, where he does the step up off Orton's back and then catches him into the RKO.
I almost put Seth Rollins WrestleMania 31 just in general before the RKO and then the cash in.
And had the Hardy Boys return at WrestleMania 33 for that tag team match where it looks like the New Day are coming down, and then it's the Hardy Boys fresh off their run in Ring of Honor to return to WWE. And things like Cody returning at WrestleMania 38 and the Stone Cold Kevin Owens match and the Jackass match, Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn, is just one of the funnest matches in WrestleMania history. So yeah, there's plenty of fun stuff. Surprisingly enough, in the biggest wrestling show of all time, there's plenty of fun stuff that's happened on it.
All right, everybody. Well, that is our top rope list, or those are our top rope lists. I guess you could put it that way because it's not a consolidated one. And there are so many different moments from WrestleMania's history. 40 years worth of many, over 40 nights now that we have the 2 nights of that, and all the different matches, all the different moments, whether it's something like an entrance, or it's a backstage promo, or it's a thing on commentary, or it's a particular move. There's so many different ways you could take this. You probably have a lot of different alternative suggestions for your list, which we want to know, so drop them in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit the like button on there. If you're listening outside of YouTube, consider going over to YouTube and hitting the like button anyway. But if you are on the Facebook or Twitter or something like that, give us a shout out or put something else out there. Share this on social media or Reddit, whatever it might be. And keep the discussion going, because who knows, by the time we get to a couple weeks from now, we might have some more things to add to this list. And we might have to talk about that with post-Mania 40 of some of the greatest moments of all time. Could happen there. But in the meantime, as I mentioned many times before, Discord, hop on over to that server. Also, check out that Funko Pop contest we've got going on now that I will have up by the time this is posted. Check out the Smark Madness tournament. Do all the Smark Play stuff, Redbubble, TeePublic, Patreon, YouTube channel membership and stuff. Stay tuned for that Hall of Lame podcast That's going to be the next episode you're going to be hearing from us, at least if you are on the Darkcast tier or on the members only kind of content. Check out fanboysanonymous.com for everything that's happening over on the Blue brand and all that stuff. Don't know exactly what's next, but could be something X-Men related. Maybe. I don't know. X-Men 97 is coming out, so. In the meantime, though, if you check out the link tree over on amangotree.com or anthonymango.com, you'll see links to all sorts of different Smark Moment and Fanboys Anonymous stuff and everything else. So check out that stuff. Follow me at Tony Mango and follow Robin Callum on all the stuff that they're working on.
Yep, you can follow me everywhere at Dude Police. Check out my work on Fightful. Check out Fightful Select and the build-up to WrestleMania. And as always, I will keep you guys updated with anything I'm doing. Just follow me on social media. But check out what Callum's got going on as well.
Yep, so you can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. You can check out the Power Rankings every weekend over on smarkmoment.com, where I'm ranking the WWE Superstars based on their previous week performances. If you also want to see where we're ranking WWE Superstars, you can check out the Fantasy League to see who's picking up points over at www.fantasyleague.com or through Smark Moment, see how our teams are doing, who's picking up points, as we're really in the final stretch towards WrestleMania, only a few weeks away before crowning the winner of the latest season.
And who knows what's going to happen in the meantime from then, but we, of course, will be coming back around to WrestleMania discussion in so many different ways over the course of the next few weeks, but, not getting into predictions quite yet and stuff, but that's coming around right around the corner. So stay tuned for that and everything else that's happening here. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.